It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Croatia. Here we go. Hello and welcome again to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and we continue Series 25 on the groups and players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Croatia's players. This is part 2 of the player media cast, and here we look at the selections. In part 1, we made a list of the candidates and introduced them and their likelihood of making the final squad. There is a link to part 1 in the show notes for you, and this episode will be divided into 2 sections. In section 1, we'll look over the list we compiled in part 1 to see who made it and who didn't. And in section 2, we'll summarize surprises in the selections and review injuries. We actually did plan at section 3, and we did it for the teams in Group A and for Spain in Group B here, where we revisited the predictions of the starters in light of the warm-up games. But unfortunately, time has forced us to cut that section out. And before we begin, I'll say that I was usually trying to wear the same shirt that I did for part 1. But I think in the Croatia media cast, I said that my brother was visiting Croatia. And look, he brought me back a Croatia shirt. So how can I not wear it for this part 2 of Croatia? Let's begin then. And we look at the list that we compiled for part 1. And now we'll go through and see who made it. Manager Zlatko Dalic will consider having made the squad in that he wasn't fired before the tournament there. And with goalkeepers, let's look and see. We had a definite candidate in Dominik Livakovic, who was selected. 2 likely candidates, Ivica Ivusic, who was selected, and Nedeljko Labrovic, also selected for the squad. So that left no room for our possible candidate, Dominik Kotarski, although he did make the preliminary squad. And I should have said that at the beginning, that Croatia chose their 26-man final squad, and then they made a 9-man standby list. Later, this was just called a 35-man preliminary squad with those 9 players not making the cut. Anyway, possible goalkeeper Dominik Kotarski did make, we'll call it a preliminary squad there, and ultimately didn't make the final cut. Okay, let's move on to defenders and the central defense. And we begin with our definite candidate, Josko Gvardiol, who was selected for the squad. Also definite was Josip Sutalo, and he too was selected. 2 likely candidates here, and the first is Martin Erlich, and he was selected, as was Domagoj Vida there, so a veteran there, and the team really kind of went with their veterans here. We had 2 possible candidates. The first was Marin Pongracic, and he was selected. But Duj Kaletakar, also a possible candidate, only made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut there. We move on to left backs, where we had no definite candidate, but we did have a likely candidate in Borna Sosa, and he was selected for the squad. Our possible candidate there, Borna Barisic, was selected only for the preliminary squad, didn't make the final cut there. Over to right backs, and Josip Stanisic, a definite candidate, was selected, and we had 2 definite candidates here. The other, Josip Juranovic, also selected. Those were the only players in that right back category, so both selected. And on to the midfield. We begin with defensive midfielders, where we didn't have actually any candidates at the possible level or higher. However, a player who was seemingly off the squad, we had him in the we should have had him in the retired category because he hadn't appeared since the 2022 World Cup, is Christian Jakic. However, he made the preliminary squad, but not the final squad there. So a bit of a surprise there, but ultimately coming to nothing. Central midfielders, we have Marcelo Brozovic as a definite candidate who was selected, and also Luka Susic, our possible candidate, selected as well. Those are the only two candidates in that category. Over to left midfielders, and we have Mateo Kovacic, who was selected. He was a likely candidate for us there, and the only one in that category. And on the right midfield, we had Luka Modric, whose shirt I'm wearing, the number 10 there. Luka Modric, the captain of the team. We had him as a likely candidate, really because of his age, 38 years old, but we knew he would be a definite candidate here. Okay, up to the attacking midfield, and we look at the left attackers where we had a lot of candidates. The first one was the likely candidate, Luka Ivanusic, and he was selected for the squad. Ivan Perisic, the first of the three possible candidates, was selected. Joseph Brekalo, though, the second one, was not chosen. However, Marco Piaka was selected. So two of the three possible candidates there. And we move on. We're not really going to talk about the players who are seemingly off the squad or retired here, unless they're selected. On to right attackers, and we have Mario Pasalic, not to be confused with the player whose name is one letter different, also in this category, Marco Pasalic. He was a possible candidate, but was selected, and I kind of skipped over the other definite candidate there, Lovro Mayer, who was selected. So all three of the players in our right attacking category were selected. Central attacking players, or at least players coded that way, Nikola Vlasic seemed to overcome an injury there and was selected. He was a likely candidate for us without the injury taken into account. He was likely. And Martin Baturina, the possible candidate, also selected. Okay, that's the midfield, and we're left only to look at the forwards. And forward Andre Kramaric had been a definite candidate, and he was chosen. And likely candidate Bruno Petkovic, also chosen. We had three possible candidates here. The first was Ante Budimir, who was selected. Second, Petar Musa, not selected for the squad, and nor was the third one, Dion Beljo. So that is it. Those are our 26 players taking us into the Cup. We did have 4 players who were added to the squad here, but they only were selected for the preliminary squad. I'll just introduce them by name. If they were selected for the squad, we'd give a bit more detail. But attacking midfielder Tony Fruck, Marin Lubicic, Igor Matanovic, and Petar Susic. All 4 of those selected for that 9-man standby squad / preliminary squad, and none of them selected. So, we have one more too, Nico Sigur added to that list. So, yes, Croatia may be considering a few new names there, but not bringing any in. So it's the veterans all the way. for them. Well, they do have a couple of new players who had been playing recently. So let's go to section 2 and a review of the surprises. Any notable non-selections? Well, there are none. And surprise inclusions, none. So we have just the new players. I should have done them in this section here. The 5 players on the preliminary squad that we mentioned, but again, because they didn't make the final squad, we're not going to go into detail on them. Updates on injuries, really no problems for Croatia. The only one was Nikola Vlasic, but we'll say he recovered from injury. He was out with an abductor injury since mid-May and had missed the last 3 games for his club. He had been expected to return on May 31st and did make it back in time to be selected for this squad. But we do wonder if that injury will play a role in his selection as a starter or his participation in the Cup. Okay, that is it for section 2 and it for this part 2 of the mediacast. So we hope your familiarity with Croatia is increased and enjoy the Cup. We would like to thank Mike Tripak, Make Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.